I asked Joe just to think about and for us to talk about the area of stewardship and just how the Lord has worked in your life. How has God worked in your heart to kind of see the importance of stewardship, what that means, and managing your life for God's glory? How is the Lord?
Well, it's been a journey, a lifetime journey. I never really had to think about it when I was just a little kid, 5 years old. It's time to go clean the church. We just go clean the church. Every Sunday, my dad threw a piece of paper in the offering plate when it passed by, and I assume it's a check. And it was, I didn't know anything really about it. It was kind of like, those appetizers they give you at the Mexican restaurant. Like it was nacho business. So I didn't know anything, but I didn't have any money anyway. So whatever time my parents told me to dedicate to the church, that's what the church got, because that's all I had. But as I got older, I started hearing, and Dave Ramsey talks about the legalistic Baptist churches in Tennessee. Yeah, they didn't have anything on Alabama. I tell you, I heard stories about the whole thing about when Jesus was telling the Pharisees, give on to Caesar this, what he was saying is pay your taxes first, and then you tithe on what's left. And other people say, well, I tithe on a bigger amount. And you want to know the irony? I found out they're all wrong. So as I was getting older, 12 years old, I started understanding some of these concepts more. Still didn't have any money until the church decided to pay me to mow the lawn. And I was like, yeah, I didn't need to pay me to do that. This lawn's only like 2 acres. That's nothing compared to what my parents make me mow. I do it for free. And my dad said, with what lawnmower? I didn't have a lawnmower or gas. So I took the church's money and I gave it to my dad so that I could rent the lawnmower and buy the gas so that I could mow the church's lawn. But that was just, I didn't have anything. And so, like we say, when you really think about what you have belongs to God, it's like you don't have anything. It's easy to be generous with it. Why not? And, all this legalism and stuff. But at some point, I moved out of my parents' house and got married, and I kind of started understanding, because who is this IRS and why are they giving him some of my money? And so, minimum wage was like $3.25. And of course, I worked in the restaurant industry, so they only paid us $3 an hour because we were supposed to make the rest of it in tips. If you didn't make it in tips, you're supposed to tell them so that they could give you the rest, but you only did that once, because then they said, you must be a bad employee if nobody's giving you tips, and they'd fire you. So I was making like $120 a week, and Uncle Iris was taking, pretty good portion of that. So I was like, now I had to make the decision. Do I give the church $12 or $9? And some weeks it was hard, because I'm sitting there playing a game with I know it's going to take the electric company 2 months before they actually shut the power off. So, see, I can put off paying them for a couple of weeks, but then I got to give them some of it. And I was like, Mr. White, you still owe us another $50. Oh, I'm sorry, that was an accounting error. The error was I didn't have the money. But
so you're kind of like me when it comes to, we grew up in the church. We heard about giving.
Yeah, and it was always about a tithe and a tithe. Although I did find out the truth about that. Because, see, back when I was 12 years old, I stole my first Bible. And that sounded bad.
You stole your first Bible?
I'm not a career Bible thief. I gave Pastor Jerry his back as soon as I found out I had it. I brought it right back. I said, this is too nice to be my Bible. It's got a pretty cover. Anyway, no, what happened was, short story long, family of 5, hotel room, North Carolina, at the beach. It was raining. Found a book, started reading it, liked it, wasn't finished with it. My mom told me I could take it home. Somewhere around South Carolina, I got to the part right where it's like, thou shalt not steal. It was okay, though, because on the inside cover it said, placed by the Gideons.
Yeah.
If you need a Bible and you don't have one, you can have this. My dad said, you don't have a Bible. I was like, we got lots of Bibles. He's like, no, I got lots of Bibles. You don't got a Bible.
Yeah.
And I said, well, do I need it, though? Because my father has many Bibles. And my mom said, well, if you're stealing Bibles, then you need one. So I just read it all the way through. And I started finding out some different things than what I was learning at church. Do you know that when they came to trick Jesus and ask him about paying taxes, it wasn't about taxes. It wasn't about taxes at all. And that whole thing about like, well, I pay my taxes, and but turns out when you get Matthew 23:23, Jesus is actually telling the religious leaders, he's like going like, okay, you guys are so nitpicky and legalistic. You're sitting there, you're counting. I like basil, but he talks specifically about their dill. So they're out there and they're picking the leaves off of their little herb garden and they're counting them out. 9 for me, 1 for God. 9 for me, 1 for God. He's like, you so busy picking on that stuff, you forgot about mercy. Mm-hmm. You forgot about justice. You forgot about taking care of your fellow man. You forgot about faithfulness. And you think you've wrapped it all up by counting your leaves. And that's not what it's about. By the time you get to 2 Corinthians, Paul's in there writing stuff like, look, what God wants is a cheerful giver. Don't be sitting there nitpicking the nickels and dimes. Give cheerfully, according to your means. Mm-hmm. Which I was talking to my buddy Dave, and he's talking about like, you don't just give 10%. You give according to what God's blessed you with, according to what you need, according to what you have, according to what the church needs, according to what your neighbor needs. And that was one of those moments. It's like,
so I'll kind of put you on the spot then.
Yeah.
You grew up like I did, hearing about giving.
Very legalistic.
We grew up enough around in the church to know there are at times people who are like, that's all the church wants is just your money. And we talk about stewardship every year, so that if you're a guest with us, we just happen to be talking about it. But how would you respond to someone who says like, basically a church just sometimes that's all they want is just their money? And how have the Lord kind of grown you to realize like that's really what it's not about? And how has the Lord kind of grown you in the heart aspect of why you'd want to be generous?
Okay. When Jesus left his disciples standing there, you hear me talk about this a lot. This is my marching orders. He gave us one job: to go out, make disciples. We have a nice building where we can invite people in. We have a nice building as base operations to go out and reach the community. Yes, this building needs money in order to maintain. We got to take care of this pastor here, because how are people going to hear the word without somebody to preach it to them, right? He ain't going to answer that because he gets embarrassed when we want to take care of him. But he's about to have 2 teenage boys. Aaron told me the other day, he's like, I'm practically 6.
Practically six. He's practically 26.
Yeah, but we've got to take care of our community, and we need to enable ourselves as a group to be able to go out and reach the lost. And it's not about getting a new stove for the kitchen. It's about reaching the lost, and that's really a lot about what attracted me to become part of this congregation. As I came in here and I was like, wow, they got a pastor to preach the gospel. This is good. I've been to churches right where we had good pastors like that, and they got fired for doing that.
You said one of the first Sundays you came, you were going on vacation after.
Yeah.
And you told me, you said to Wendy, if he still has a job when I get back, we're going to join that church.
Yeah. Well, I said we're going to give that church a chance. We were still testing you.
And I was like, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. Back to this testing of the church like last week.
No, I don't know. I mean, the bathroom was being remodeled. I had to go to Hy-Vee to go to the bathroom. I still said, this is a good church. And here's the thing about your church. If there's stuff about your church you don't like, you need to pray for your leadership. You need to work with your leadership. I said, I haven't even joined that church, but we need a men's room. And, hopped in on that. Although the Hy-Vee men's room is nice. It's further away than the Holiday, or what we call the Circle K now, but it's worth the trip. We were talking about generosity, weren't we?
Yeah. Just I think the other thing is that how would you've lived life long enough to go through, like any of us do, challenging times. Any one of us, we were talking this morning, sometimes we get ourselves like, man, I got myself into debt, or I've, and through all of that as a believer, how have you navigated? Because like many of us, we have different seasons, and it's like, how, how would you encourage someone who might be in a season that is struggling, and they're hearing about giving, and the last thing we want to do is heap like shame upon anybody or anything, but we do want to help them learn, as you have, I'm sure, during difficult seasons, to still be generous.
And that's, yeah. Um, you know, I got saved at a young age, but I'm still a sinner, and I made lots of mistakes. Part of it was because I rebelled against my father after I got out of his house, and I made poor financial choices. Uh, there were a lot of other things I didn't want to fall into the trap of becoming a Pharisee. Because, you know, I actually like those parts in the New Testament when the Pharisees come out and try to, you know, trap Jesus and trick him. I go like, oh, Jesus is about to bring it. Yeah, that's the young man part of me, you know. And I've made a lot of financial mistakes. I thought I knew credit cards better than Dave Ramsey, and I was doing very well. God had blessed me very, very well. In 2008, I had gone to other countries. I had done all sorts of things. It was hard to maintain that because plane tickets are expensive without putting some of that on credit cards. And then all of a sudden, the stock market crash of 2008 caught up with me in March of 2009. And at that same time, all of the banks started reviewing my accounts. And my credit score wasn't bad before they reviewed it, but after they reviewed it and they lowered my credit limits below what I owed, it got bad fast. Because they were like, man, you owe us more than, you know, you're overdrawn on all your credit cards. And I'm like, I wasn't yesterday. But they lowered my credit limits and punished me financially for being over the limit. Said all the money was due right now because you're over the limit. And they punished me because they waited about a week to tell me that. So yeah, I was late on the payments. And all of a sudden, I was in a situation where I couldn't afford anything. And unfortunately, decisions were made right where the church did not get that much money from me. And Wendy and I seem to be sometimes magnets for people that have problems, and all of a sudden, there were people we couldn't help. Mm-hmm. And that felt horrible. And I won't say I immediately knew, like, aha, I have mismanaged God's money, and now I'm not able to do what God would have me do. It took a little while for me to figure out that I wasn't just messed up, but I messed up everything. And I did what I could to get that back on track. God blessed us, helped us with certain bankers to show mercy and drop some of the extra charges. And we got out of that, and I will tell you, everything in my life, I said, this is God's. When my kids were little, I brought them to church as babies and said, like, I want to dedicate them to God. Mm-hmm. Every time I had to sit them down and talk to them before doling out punishment for disobedience and misbehavior, I explained it to them. I said, God sent you to me to raise. Mm-hmm. And if I don't discipline you and raise you for Him, He's going to discipline me. So you understand, mm-hmm. I take no joy in depriving you of anything. Mm-hmm. I take no joy in punishing you. But I have to. Mm-hmm. And don't get the wrong impression. I don't beat my kids. I mean, none of the bruises show anymore. They're good.
We know.
But there is that point right where I came to the realization that if I messed up my life, I didn't just mess up mine.
Yeah.
I messed up my ability to do what God would have me do.
Yeah.
And like I said, Matthew 23:23 is just the beginning of a hint at what Jesus was trying to say about tithing. And when we get into 2 Corinthians chapter 9, we start reading right where Paul's saying, like, look, it's not about the tithe. It's about the heart. God wants a joyful giver. And, you know, sometimes people get in situations, right, where the amount of money they make versus the amount of money their mortgage cost is upside down. And they don't have anything to give.
Right.
Except maybe time. They can give of the talents that God's given them. And we start acting responsibly once we hit that rock bottom. And as we act responsible and we get where we're supposed to be, we know it's time to not just count out $1 for every $10 we make, but what do people need? What does my church community need?
Yeah.
What can I give?
Yeah.
And if I can give more than just 1 out of 10, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
I mean, a bigger ice house would be nice for people to like that. I actually don't like that. I can give up ice house because that's not a problem for me. I can give up coffee. I gave up Starbucks for Jesus. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, what I hear a lot of what you say too is that for you, it's been a process of growing in your worship to the Lord. That it's not about the money. It's not. It's about an act of worship to the Lord. And we've all been in different seasons of life. That's why the Lord puts us in a family, because we're all in different seasons of life. We're there to support each other, help each other. And there's seasons of life where it's not about necessarily the amount. It's about just doing what I need to do that's right before the Lord, so that hopefully in the future, as I continue to depend on Him, He'll help me be able to bless others in the future.
Exactly. I mean, it was never really about a fear of anything, like, oh, if I don't give the Lord 10% of my cash, I'm going to go to hell. I never feared that. I trusted on His word, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not about like, ooh, if I can slip God an extra $5 this week, He's going to love me more. It's not about that either. It's about that relationship with God, right, where it's like He gave me everything.
Yeah.
And I'm no saint. I do have a 50-inch TV. But you know what I mean? I did get myself some nice things.
Well, and the Lord isn't against that. We talked about that this morning.
No.
Lord is not against giving His children, allowing us to live life and do. It's more so, again, it's back to worship. Who or what do I worship? Right. And you know, it's not easy to share. And I really appreciate your willingness to be transparent and authentic. I mean, that's one of the things that I know, not just me, but many people appreciate you, just the authenticity.
Well, I have to be, because I don't have a very good memory, and if I start telling
Wendy's
lies,
Wendy's here to check your facts. So,
you know.
But thank you so much for sharing.
Oh no, thanks. It's been a pleasure.
And I hope it's been encouraging to you, just wherever your journey's at. You know, obviously, you know, with the Lord, that it's all a process of growth. Sometimes it might be the first time this month you've heard, like, wow, everything belongs to God. I haven't been living that way. I haven't even thought about that. It's okay. You're not alone. We're all in a process of growth. We're all here to support each other, and I hope it's been encouraging to you. So thank you, Joe, for showing.
No.
We'll give him a
Thank
hand
you.
for encouragement. Thank you, Joe.
Just stoked to be on the show today.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for sharing.